Welcome to the first episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast. We are going to be your source for Star Trek, all kinds of Star Trek things. And today we're going to talk about why we are doing this podcast, about our love for Star Trek and where it comes from and what we love about it. There's all kinds of ways to love this stuff. And we're going to talk about what we specifically love. And maybe you're this kind of fan we are, and maybe you want to listen to this kind of cast.
We're a weird kind of fan. I think you'll find that soon.
Yeah, I think every fan is weird in their own way, you know. So stick around. After this ad, we're going to talk a lot about Star Trek. Stick around. Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
David C. Robertson, my oldest friend. How are you?
I'm good. We'll say that.
I'm really excited personally.
Are you?
Yes, like me and you. You know, I often hear you on the DC On Screen podcast talk about how you and Jeff were doing your podcast for years in your kitchen before you were recording.
Me and who?
I call him Jeff. Jason.
You called him Jeff.
Sorry, Jeff is
my J guy.
Your J guy. You're Mr. J. Let's talk about your Mr. J. We both have other podcasts. I do the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. Dave does the DC On Screen podcast. So if you liked this today, check that out. But today we're starting our Star Trek podcast, and you guys often talk about how you were doing that for years in your kitchen before you got on mic. Well, my thing is we've been doing this podcast since we were 6 years old, standing outside church, trying to avoid getting involved. And then like, oh, we got to go to the bathroom. Yeah, we just stood outside and talked about Star Trek for hours. Like it was, they'd be having like business meetings and stuff in church, and we were 6 years old talking all about what Geordi LaForge was doing. It's just, you know, this is where my real fandom comes from, is like conversations with you back in the day, from the time we were 6, till now. And so we're finally moving that onto a microphone.
Yeah. It's weird that we haven't before, but
yeah,
you know,
yeah, well,
I guess we've been busy.
We both really got into podcasting and started podcasts and, about universes that we love, and now it's, I don't know. To be honest, this is what's got me excited, and it's this episode is going to be on why we're doing this podcast, why we love Star Trek, and just
this episode, and then all the others you won't be excited.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about how much we hate Star Trek for the rest of time. No, this episode is all going to be a love fest, really, because the thing that inspired me to do this cast. The final straw, I'll say. We've been talking about possibly doing this cast for a long time. The straw was the announcement of this Picard series.
Yeah, and that's not to say that the Picard series is the only thing we're looking forward to or excited about.
No.
But, you know, it's one of those things where, like, if you've ever tried to start a podcast, you know, you talk about it, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's going to be awesome, and we can do this. And then you go to look at actually doing it, and you're like, oh, this is insurmountable.
It often is. And it's just, your excitement level has to reach the point where it overcomes your desire to have free time. It is the truth of it. And I mean, the thing is, me and you, even while we weren't doing this podcast, even up till now, like I said, 6 years old till now, we were sitting on the phone talking like 3 a.m. conversations about what this Picard series might be. And I'm floored because
I don't think we had that foresight.
What? What do you mean?
You said we were 6 years old. We were sitting around on the phone until 3 a.m.
No.
Picard
I said
show might be.
I said from age of 6 until now, we were having 3 a.m. conversations. Recently, when we were 6, we were talking about, you know, Worf and Geordi and Data, and now That's what's so exciting to me. Like, a big part of this kind of geek media for me is a continuing universe. It's one of the reasons I started the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, and my love of that universe, it really does stem from my love of Star Trek. Star Trek was the first thing to introduce me to, like, a big, all-consuming universe that is, you know, the first episode connects to the last, and I love that. And so them bringing Picard back means to me they're getting back to the prime timeline, and that's a big part of what excites me.
Yeah, I am not one of those who subscribes so far to the theory that Discovery is part of the prime timeline. Like, they have to actually convince me of that. Right.
And again, our next episode is going to be on what we love about which casts we love, which Treks we love most, and ranking them. And I think we will get into that when we discuss Discovery, about there are some differences, and that is something I look for in a Star Trek series, is consistency from between it and the other material. And Discovery is not ranking super high on that level right now. And if they wanted a future show, they should have just gone to the future, is my take on it. But I don't want to be negative. I want to talk about why I love Star Trek. And we will have all the negative time, I'm sure, because there's lots of bad stuff too to be said. There's is it 50 years now yet? How many years have we?
Yeah,
Star Trek?
This 58 maybe.
Wow. So
is it 58? No, it would be 66 to
52.
52.
Yeah, it's 52. So I'm just pumped for them to get back to the prime timeline, and not only the prime timeline, more connected to any Star Trek a Star Trek series that stars a main character from a previous Star Trek series. Which, I mean, Worf continued his life on DS9 for a few seasons, but that's the closest we've gotten to that.
Yeah. It's weird that he's in like more Star Trek than anyone.
Yeah, I wonder if Picard's coming back, or Stewart is coming back just to try to work his numbers up.
I'm not sure he can usurp Worf in any capacity.
That's probably true. Worf's got a lot on him. The other thing that does excite me, and you talk about I think probably the main negative of Discovery is the seeming lack of continuity, and the fact that I don't think the changes they're making, I don't think they're planning to explain. I think they think, this is just the way they look in this universe, or at this time.
Are you talking about the Klingons?
Oh, the Klingons, the ships.
They have claimed that the Klingons will be explained. They've also claimed that everything else will be explained as well. But then also Kurtzman has gone back and kind of said, "Well, I mean,
I trust
liberties with the aesthetic."
I don't trust Kurtzman to explain things.
I don't either.
Like I've seen enough of his stuff that I don't expect explanations. But I do expect interesting stories, and the thing that I am very encouraged by in Discovery, even though it is a TV show, even though it is only a streaming on CBS All Access, which is a whole different thing we can get into, but it's a greatly produced show.
It is. It looks gorgeous.
And I think the writing is pretty good.
I think it's pretty good.
I won't say it's great.
The first 2 episodes were rough for me. But
I actually really hated the first 2 episodes. And I
was pretty close behind you, man.
Yeah, I was really down on the first 2 episodes. But pretty much everything after that, and especially the second half of the season, I think they really got into really good stuff. And we should give a spoiler alert. We'll probably talk about everything Star Trek, and that may have been at the beginning of the cast. We haven't recorded our intro yet, so that might be something that's at the beginning of the cast. But we'll be spoiling all kinds of stuff probably. But once they got into the spoiler alert, dark universe, mirror universe, it really took off for me. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was like beautiful. Like I loved it. Episode 3 on. Like I was a fan of the show.
Yeah, me too. I was definitely a fan season episode 3 on, but I think the Dark Universe was just the kind of Star Trek that I used to just read books about, and a lot of that literally was in the Dark Universe, like the Mirror Universe. I read a lot of books about the Mirror Universe over the years, and that's the thing. There's a long drought of TV Star Trek. And me and Dave, for a lot of years, read a lot of books and just really got into Star Trek.
I think at the apex of our reading, it was while it was still on the air. Like we were,
right.
It was while we were DS9 was still on the air.
Yeah, that's true. Which we should probably not get past talking about why we love Star Trek without talking about DS9. I think DS9 is an amazing show.
I do too.
So
I did not believe, I didn't watch it the first 2 or 3 years in first run, but then you convinced me to go back and give it another shot.
Oh, that's neat. I didn't remember that.
Oh yeah. I was like, it's become a soap opera. I don't know. Troy's kissing a guy every week, and it's always a different guy, and that's weird. And like Riker, will they, won't they? Or will she with Worf? There was a whole thing.
Oh yeah,
and that was really just 2 episodes with Worf.
Right.
But I was a kid. I was like,
yeah, this is a soap opera now. It has romance. I'm out.
And I don't think I realized that DS9 was not an Enterprise. I thought it was like a future Enterprise because the uniforms were different.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't really give it a lot of attention. I was just like, what is this? I don't know.
Yeah, I remember my first memory of DS9 is being in my bedroom. I don't remember what year it came out. What year did it come out?
93 or 94.
So I was under 10. And seeing...
Or was it 92? I'll look it up.
I was under 10. I was 9 or 10, 8 years old, something like that. And I was sitting in my bedroom watching a black and white TV. And an ad came on for it. And I was a big TNG fan at this age. As like I said, 8 or 9 years old. Loved Data, loved Geordi, loved Worf. And then I see this little asteroid going across the screen, and they did I wish I remembered what the ad was about. I just remember seeing it, and it was before the days I had any magazines, obviously before the internet, and it was just they played a 1 or 2 minute ad for the next for Deep Space Nine, like a year before it actually came on. And it was the middle of the night. It was something like 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was sneaking little black and white TV in my bedroom watching like an old movie or something, and they played an ad for DS9, and I was like, what? And I remember telling you about that, and you were like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Another Star Trek series. So weird, the different times we lived in.
Yeah, that was 93. January of 93 is when it premiered. And I remember watching. They had a big Friday night they had a big Friday night premiere on one station, and then it started running in syndication somewhere else on a different network or a different station. But I think because our Fox station WCOV in Montgomery played the 2-hour pilot, and then. I don't know if they continued to air it there, but it wound up going to our CBS affiliate.
Right.
Anyway, that's not terribly important. There was a tangent. But
such a confusing time for media. This will be on this night, on this channel, and now it's over here, and now it's a different channel. What? What is happening?
Yeah.
So in that way, probably CBS All Access is at least a little easier to follow.
Yeah.
Even though we're paying monthly for our Star Trek, which is kind of feels exploitative, but we're at least getting Star Trek, and it's being delivered to us in a way we can actually follow it. That's pretty great.
We were 10 years old, man.
10 years old. Yeah. I mean, and I saw that. I was 9. If it's 83 January, I was 9. I turned 10 that year, and so a few months.
Yeah, then I guess I would have been too.
Yeah, it was even a few months before that I saw the ad for it. So I was probably 8 years old, maybe just turned 9, and I saw an ad for this thing, and it's still indelibly implanted in my mind the memory of seeing the ad for Deep Space Nine. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
Good times.
I remember all that, dude. I remember being like 3 or 4 and watching the original series every night on WCOV with my parents. Like, I remember when TNG came out, and I was like sitting, like I was probably 5 or 6, sitting with a box of Cheerios, and they had like Picard and Worf and Riker on the back, and I'd be going like, which one is Kirk? Like, which one? Where's Spock? Which one is supposed to be Spock?
That's true. You go back further than I do with Star Trek. I actually hated TNG. I was like, I must have been 6 or 7. And I didn't like, I must have been 6-ish, because that's when we became friends, around 6. I did not like Star Trek, and my parents would watch it every night, like every Friday. And at the time, it's a different time, we only had one TV in our house. This is before I got my little black and white deal for my room. My family only had one TV, and so my parents liked to watch Star Trek, so it was the only thing we were allowed to watch. And I would complain and whine that we were watching this stupid science fiction show. And then at some point, I just sat in front of it enough times that I got interested in Data, I think, first. Data and Geordi and their friendship. And then I just slowly got consumed into it, and then suddenly I was a way bigger fan than my parents ever were. They were very casual. They weren't really science fiction fans. They just liked Star Trek. You know, it was just a show that they watched, like as if it were just like an NYPD Blue or whatever. Like it was just another show that came on that they liked, which I don't even understand that kind of fandom. Like I'm such a, if I really like something, I'll watch every episode, and I got to see it all. And I'm such a completist. My parents are just, whatever's on, we'll watch it. We haven't seen anything in 3 seasons. It doesn't matter. We'll catch up. And it's true. Most TV's that way these days. Most TV's still that way. But yeah, just a different kind of people.
Yeah. That always confused me about your parents. Like, and you were a lot like that when we were growing up, where you were like, hey, let's watch U.S. Marshals. And I'm like, yeah, but that's like a sequel to the thing. And you're like, I haven't seen that. And you're like, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It totally matters.
You're talking about The Fugitive and U.S. Marshals.
Yeah, The Fugitive.
That's a made up example, because I had definitely seen The Fugitive.
No. That's not a made up example.
It is,
but
too.
It was reversed. It was reversed. That's what I'm saying. Is like, you were saying I should watch the U.S. Marshals, and I'm like, I have not seen The Fugitive.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry.
And you said it doesn't matter. And I was like, it has to matter.
I would still maintain that today, which is funny. Given my love of there's certain things that I feel like I have to watch every episode of, and that's most things that I really care about. But like U.S. Marshals, it's literally like there's a character that is the same in those 2 movies, the Tommy Lee Jones character, but he has no arc in either movie. He's just an FBI agent.
I still haven't seen either of those movies, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, there's no arc to care about. So I would still, like, I don't think that was me being that kind of fan. That was just me having seen the movies and being like, it doesn't matter. There's no connection.
I still couldn't do it.
I know. We're both near the end of the spectrum on that sort of thing. I'm just a little further toward what my parents are. So the other thing, obviously, to be excited about going forward in Star Trek is the Kelvin timeline. There's a lot of Hollywood Reporter type stuff happening with the Kelvin timeline, where these actors are in or out. I don't know what's going to happen there. To be honest, I like the Kelvin timeline. I've enjoyed the movies, but it just still never really felt like Star Trek to me.
There are elements of it that I want it to be. You know, like, I really enjoy, like, a lot of the dynamic shots, and I think that, if anything, the most valuable thing the Kelvin timeline has brought to us is an urgency in the pacing and some of the dynamic shots for the ships itself. Like, they've kind of recreated how these ships should be presented.
Right.
Because I think one of the big problems is, like, from the original series on through to the end of Enterprise, they pretty much just use the same shots over and over, the same types of shots for these ships over and over again. Like, the original series kind of invented that wheel, and no one changed it. So, and that's,
well, I think they did. I mean, if you look at the evolution of it, In the original series, it is mostly static shots. Now, when you get into DS9 particularly, some in TNG, a little bit of like sort of that happens. A little bit of movement happens. The ship moves, which is interesting. I'm not sure the ship didn't move a whole lot in the original series. But in DS9, they go to like a dog fighting model in a lot of things. They do a lot of that, and even in Voyager, there's a good bit of like little ships passing by the bigger ships, firing at them and stuff. There's some dynamic movement and like actual space battle. Instead of it feeling like a submarine, which is kind of the model that the Kirk's time had, it starts to, like I said, feel more like dogfights. And now they're just shooting it in a way that action movies feel today. And I have no problem with that. That is definitely not my problem with the Kelvin timeline. A lot of people. I could go real deep on this. I'm trying to like focus my thoughts because I could go real. I'm putting a little mind meld thing on my face, trying to mind meld with my own thoughts. Okay, so a lot of people really don't get down on the Kelvin timeline because they're too action oriented. I don't mind action oriented as long as there is heart and substance behind it, which I think is where people get into People think, oh, you Star Trek fans, you just want it to be more boring. There's that great Onion article from years ago. It's like an Onion video, and it says something like, Star Trek fans upset that the 2009 Star Trek doesn't have enough long committee conversations or whatever.
No, it was something like doesn't have enough long tables with board meetings or something.
Long boardrooms, boardroom meetings, and like. I do enjoy a good board meeting. Don't get me wrong. People are always telling me, show don't tell. Like, that's the whole TV thing. I love a good telling sometimes, if it's told well. One of my favorite scenes in cinema is Doc Brown explaining time travel to Marty. In number 2, and he's explaining the split timelines. I love that shit. That is my shit. I
enjoy that, but I didn't like that scene because I felt like it broke the previous movie.
Right. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But actually, and I don't even just mean that. I mean like the scene. Every scene where Doc Brown explains anything to Marty is always a very telly scene.
Yeah. The architect scene is the best scene out of the Matrix for me.
I agree. I was going to bring that one up, but it's a lot more divisive. I was trying to get people listening to this on our sides.
No. We don't want to start strong.
No, I agree with you.
And then, like, suddenly we start, like, we show who we are, and then we start losing people. This is who
I'm happy to discuss the architect. I'm just going to come out and say it. I like The Matrix 2 and 3. I
do too.
I do. I think they're great movies. I don't think they're as mind-blowing as Matrix 1. Matrix 1 is so incredibly innovative and interesting, and it brought the idea of living in a simulation to an entire generation, and it blew my mind. Love it. But Matrix 2 and 3 are great movies. Like they do different things. If I left all the substance off the table, I would watch those movies just for the fight scenes. But the substance and all the philosophy they try to dive into, and they're being a little high-minded. But man, I love it. I love that they're challenging the form and trying to get more interesting with it. And I think probably the first one is the best. But I still really like 2 and 3. But that architect scene, everyone made fun of it, and they were like, there's just a long scene of exposition where they're just explaining, and I'm like, no, it was a beautiful scene where this guy's explaining the. I love it. I love that scene.
Yeah.
I love the architect scene.
It was done with panache too, man.
Oh, yeah.
I dug it.
All those screens in the background with the different versions of Keanu Reeves freaking out or having different reactions.
So good.
And they're just calculations in the mind of the architect. I love it. I love it so much. And so, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is we don't have the same perspective that all Star Trek fans do. A lot of Star Trek fans are very utopian in their thought process.
Humanistic.
They're humanistic, and I'm not saying I have no humanist bent in me,
Right.
but I like a good story, and I definitely, I think Joss Whedon said it best about Star Trek. Someone asked him about Star Trek, and he said that it was sanitized for your protection.
Yeah.
And like the worst worst Star Trek, that's true of. I think some of the worst Star Trek, Voyager, is just too sanitized, and they're scared to allow the characters to have flaws. Mm-hmm. And that's,
or importantly, conflicts.
Yeah, or more importantly, conflict. Like they're literally, I think this wasn't it like it was a Rick Berman or a wasn't there like basically a rule that they couldn't really have conflict on the ship? They had to have the conflict all had to be external at some points.
Yeah, and that didn't come from Berman. Berman just acquiesced and held up a rule that Roddenberry had created, and Roddenberry forgot that his character, his Federation characters had conflict all the time on the original series, but by Next Generation, he'd kind of, I feel like he had bought into his own hype, and there was all sorts of weird stuff, like in the 70s, there was, I think it was like an excerpt from James T. Kirk, supposedly. It was written by Gene Roddenberry, supposedly. I say that, supposedly. In the motion picture novelization, where he talks about how everyone on Earth is very, very liberal, and all of Starfleet is very, very conservative, because it takes like basically dumb conservative military people to like go out and explore the outer reaches of space, because everyone on Earth is too liberal and too soft. Like,
so basically, he changed his politics over the years.
He changed his politics in certain aspects, and then also did a lot of cocaine.
Right, and just got into the Hollywood culture. And I think the best Star Trek is presenting both. Like, I think that in many ways, and they're not. It definitely doesn't always break down on like a liberal versus a conservative ideal. It breaks down in many ways, the original series at least, on an emotions versus logic. And that's what's so beautiful about the original series is you've got McCoy on one side, Spock on the other, in almost all the best episodes. I feel like almost every one that really hits home with me is those two on either sides. They're the angel and the demon on Kirk's shoulder. And depending on the episodes, they might swap sides. Like, it really, one is leading with his emotions and his heart, and one is trying to lead with their logic. And it's Kirk's job. And what I love is at the time it would have been really easy to just always say the alien's wrong or something like that. Star Trek is so cool and progressive in that way that like, he's not trying to decide between like. They don't treat Spock as an other in that show. He although they do, they make jokes that treat him as the other. But like, the logic he is having is often bringing them to the point they need to get to.
Yeah.
And it's Kirk's job. And third way thinking is a whole thing that's very important to that show. Like, he is thinking of his own way out of the situation. Like, you present me with two options. Well, I'm going to come up with a third option that will appease both the logic and emotions in this situation, you know? And that's often what life needs. Like, you just, often life needs you to think about things more. Like, you'd see two options in front of you. Often it's not, either of the options isn't the right way to go. It's going to be some form of, you know, a compromise, or some form that you haven't even thought of that reaches everyone, you know. And I think that's the same way with all the stuff that's dividing us these days, whether it be politics or whether it be gender or whether it be whatever. All the things that divide us, a lot of it. There are logical ways we can come to conclusions that will be best for everyone. Not all things. Some things should be settled, but like we really need to come come with some new options. I like people with ideas, and I think Star Trek is all about ideas.
And like the original series, like I really love science fiction. I feel like the original series in DS9 did this really well, where they would present both sides of an argument.
Yes.
And kind of like even leave it ambiguous as to what the real correct answer should have been, because it was designed to make us think. There was an episode of The Next Generation that got a lot of heat because it's like they go and there's a I can't remember the name of it, but they find this asteroid and there are people living inside of it, and these people have like weeded out all genetic imperfections. And the irony of the episode is that Geordi is the one who saves them, and Geordi sort of casually brings up the fact that, like, it's kind of ironic because, I'm a blind man, and and if I were born in your society, you would have killed me. And the blind man is saving your entire world. And that took a lot of flack for being a pro-life stance that Star Trek was taking. Mm-hmm. And, the writers and Rick Berman came out and very ardently stated, like, we wouldn't, there's no one on this show is pro-life. We're all pro-choice. And just that was an oversight. We didn't mean to say that. And I just felt like that was a really cowardly and stupid way of going about it, because that is a pretty interesting argument to just kind of throw out there and let sit and let people take from it what they would.
Right.
The episode obviously doesn't have anything with, like, no one comes out and says, I'm Rick Berman. I just want to point out.
Right. But they're acknowledging that in the episode, in the writing of the episode, they are acknowledging an argument that goes against what they fundamentally believe. And I think that is important in fiction. When you write a character, we just had on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, we just had a big episode where we talked about the ethics of the MCU. And one of our big conversations in that was to talk about what we think about people bringing their political views into their fiction. And I think it's great and fine to bring your political views in your fiction, but to make an empty suit or a straw man of the other side is you're doing yourself and everyone watching a disservice. Like, you have to, the people that you disagree with are not always idiots. They just have you differ in your opinions. And if you're not working to understand the opinions of the other side, then you're not truly even fighting the battles you want to fight. You're just screaming into the void. Like, you're screaming you're preaching to the choir, screaming into a void. You're not going to impact anyone who disagrees with you if you're not understanding why they disagree with you. And not to mention, you might evolve in your own opinions if you allow yourself, but we're so demagogic in society and we're so separated that we don't take the time to listen to other people and other views. And I think that is, I think it's a great time for Star Trek to introduce ideas and let them fight it out in fiction. And of course, whoever's making the fiction has the ability to put their weight on the scale, their thumb on the scale to tip it in their direction. But that if you make a reasonable argument and then you give them if you make a reasonable argument and the person you're arguing against in the fiction is actually more realistic, you have you have done your due diligence, I guess, and your argument is much more compelling instead of just feeling like, I don't know, like you're just it feels like a vanity project or dumb.
Yeah, I absolutely don't want to see I don't want to see Star Trek just be like a mouthpiece for either political party.
Me neither.
I am somewhat of a middle of the road kind of guy, and even beyond that, even if I wasn't, I would be much more interested in watching something that, like, especially it being Star Trek and it being like, we're going to disguise all of these, current day problems in science fiction. We should probably do that with the politics too. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And they already are. They already are with the new show. It is very clear. It is very clear with Discovery that those are some MAGA Klingons. Like,
I didn't know if they were like MAGA Klingons or if they were like what, Westboro Baptist Church or something.
No, I think based on the kind of production and the kind of politics of Hollywood, I just believe, I think they're going straight up with like, those Klingons are those are all the right wing. Like that's, and they are saying that like a small sect within the right wing, which is this small sect of Klingons, has gained power and is influencing the Klingon Empire in a way that is creating war on their beautiful utopian society. And I think that's just, I think nothing's been more clear to me than like that analog. And I think like in that first episode, and that's one of the reasons I didn't like the first episode, was how bald-faced the Klingons were. Two things: evil, and clearly evil, and just sort of like ancient. They're following their ancient mystic ways. Like it felt like they were straw men completely in that first episode, and then on top of that, they were just clear analogs to what was going on politically, and it just felt like you're not presenting anything that's going to change any hearts and minds, if that's what your goal is, and I feel like it was. Like
I'm not sure that I agree with that completely. Like, I feel like part of the problem with that is like they did kind of set it up that way, but they also like tried to balance it out by making them a very rich culture, and they tried to like make it well rounded in a way that like bored me. Because it was like, here's all this crazy shit they're doing, but also look at these etchings. Clearly, this is a long and honorable society. Look at this,
right.
These tapestries. Look at how we're not having them speak, English at all.
Yeah.
They're all like very long, carefully worded Klingon speeches.
Oh yeah, they made the Klingons sound intelligent.
They tried really hard to make them seem like.
They also, to me, it made them sound like this tribal warrior race, which is what they are in the original. Text. I don't want them to change the fact that the Klingons are a tribal warrior race. That's what they are. I think it's interesting to have that go up against a fully developed tribal warrior race is interesting. Like that it made it to that level without ever, like that kind of the ideal of Star Trek, the utopia of it all is that we're all going to eventually come together and agree perfectly on a government and a way of sharing all of the world's all of the universe's wealth, and we're going to have this sort of utopia, and that's great. I think that is wonderful. We can talk about the politics of that sometime, but to have the idea that there could be a race that develops space travel that is still warring within itself and having this sort of tribal feuds and stuff is weird. It's weird and it's interesting, and it's I think it's trying to be an analog for a lot of things that we face here on Earth, but it's so far in the future that the idea of that always is weird to me, even as someone who doesn't fully fall on one side or the other, and I don't know that that pure sort of liberal utopia is a possible world.
See, I don't think it was possible in Star Trek. Like they claim it was, but if you look at the canon. And that's going to be a dirty word on this show, probably for the fans anyway. But
canon's going to be a dirty word?
Yeah, I mean, it's not for us. The people are going to listen to the show and be like, God, stop talking about canon.
Oh, if they don't want to talk about canon, this is probably not the show for them. Like,
no,
we are going to get into canon. That's having a canon is one of the, and as I said it, one of the first things I said in this cast was, having a consistent universe is one of the most important things to me in any fiction. And like just, and then that goes for having your characters be consistent. If you're going to be a show like NYPD Blue or whatever, I keep using that as an explanation, and I don't think I've ever seen an episode of NYPD Blue. Just like those,
I know I haven't.
cop procedurals. Like, if I'm going to like that show, I'm probably not, period. Probably not going to watch it. But you got to have consistency of characters, and, like, you can't have someone die one episode and they're just back for no reason the next. Like, you got to have consistency. But when you're if you're going to try to make an expansive world like Star Trek or Star Wars or Marvel or DC, you got to have this consistent through line if it's all going to be one universe. It's got to be consistency. And, I mean, but, there are mistakes, but...
You look at the Balance of Terror when we have a bridge officer whose grandfather was killed by a Romulan, and they realize for the first time the Romulans look like the Vulcans. So this dude starts being a complete dick to Spock, and he's a bridge officer, human Federation Starfleet bridge officer.
Yeah,
and Kirk has to say, can it, dude, or you're going to your quarters. There's no room for prejudice on the bridge.
Yeah.
And I know that...
I wish I'd known that. I wish I'd known that line, there's no room for prejudice on the bridge, a couple weeks ago, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Go ahead.
But I know it leaves a lot of... it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Kirk being prejudiced. Scotty being prejudiced.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things.
I love it.
One of the other straws that broke the camel's back for me was I listen to a lot of Star Trek podcasts. I do. I love Star Trek. I love podcasts, and I love to listen to everything. And one of the things that always makes me want to start them is when I listen to podcasts and I want to scream at them. I'm like, I need to talk to you. And it's not enough to write a message on a message board. Like, I need to have this conversation myself. And I had someone, there was a cast recently that was talking about Star Trek VI. And they kept talking about how, how this wouldn't work today because the crew was being so dismissive of the Klingons. And I think McCoy says something like, they say only the top of the line models can talk.
That wasn't McCoy though. It was that was literally two guys, like ensigns, I think, or crewmen.
Oh, okay.
Who were proven to be like racist assholes at the end of the episode, at the end of the movie.
Interesting.
And co-conspired with Valeris to kill the Chancellor. See,
this is me. I haven't seen the movie in a few years, but I was completely listening to that podcast, and that's what they said. It was McCoy? But anyway, they do make they make a number of sort of like racist comments about the Klingons in that movie, and the point being is that they're overcoming their racism, and so to overcome racism, to tell a story about overcoming racism, you make your character that you're following and loving have flaws. And maybe not full-on racism, like those two cadets or whatever they are. But make them have flaws that they can overcome. And making Star Trek so sterilized where you don't have flaws is a problem. And I don't want to see them do that. And I don't think they are. I think Discovery... has already, we've already had characters with some flaws, but I definitely would like to see more of that. More problems for them to actually overcome, and darkness can be in your main crew, and they don't always have to be right. The Klingons can turn out to be right, about some things on some issues, and I miss that about Star Trek, and I want that to happen more on the Star Trek coming forward, and we've got so much to talk about. I'm so excited, Dave. This has been a really good, fun first episode.
Has it?
For me, I'm just enjoying talking about Star Trek. I've obviously have been pinned up and ready to talk about it for a while, and this is really exciting. So this is our first episode. We'll be back, and there's lots to talk about because not only do we have what's coming, which is Discovery in January. Is that right?
Yeah, and we've got short treks.
We've got short treks,
that we can talk about.
We'll probably do a cast on the Tilly one, which is already out and we've already seen. We'll probably have that up fairly soon, after our couple intro episodes that we're going to drop. Then we got short treks, we got the new Picard series, we got the Kelvin stuff that might still be happening, and
Tarantino Trek,
right? That Tarantino Trek,
is that happening?
It might be. It might be a Tarantino Trek movie. I don't know how I feel about that.
every couple of weeks I just see Carl is like a headline that says Carl Urban still doesn't know, and I'm like, why do you keep going to Carl Urban? Like, why is he the only one talking to any of you?
Carl Urban needs Carl Urban. A lot of the other ones have other series they're worrying about. Carl Urban's like, I guess I just talk about Star Trek more. Anyway, we'll be back very soon with more episodes. I think our next episode is going to be on ranking our favorite live action series, and I am excited about that one because it's just going to give us a reason to dive into all the series and talk about specifically like why we like each one and what we do and don't like, and rank them. That way, we kind of get to the point of what kind of fans we are. Because one of the things about these Star Trek podcasts, there's a lot of people. I feel like podcaster. There is a Venn diagram for the number of podcasters and the number of Star Trek fans, and I feel like there's a lot of crossover in that Venn diagram, just because of the kind of nerds we are. That kind of, it's really funny actually. I went to school for audio engineering. You probably can't tell by how this sounds, but I went to school for audio engineering, and almost every studio I went and worked in had a Star Trek picture on the console. And literally, I think that just like a lot of people that go into audio engineering just like the big boards because it makes them feel like they're on Star Trek. I know it's partially that for me. There's at least a little bit of me that loves to sit behind a big board and be like, I'm going to push this fader up and hear that. Yeah. Anyway.
You know, when I lived with Jason, we basically wired some of our lights with toggle switches.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
just because of Star Trek.
That's great. That's really great. I've been wanting to get one of those voice command boxes, like a Google. I won't say the names of them, but the Google and the Amazon and the whatever have their different voice command boxes these days, and the minute they come out with one that uses isn't it Majel Roddenberry?
Yeah,
Majel
Barrett.
Majel Barrett, that's right. The minute they come out one with Majel Barrett's voice, which I'm sure they can get enough of from all the different series. And one that I can like turn my lights on and stuff, and I can call computer. I will be buying one immediately. So I'm just putting that out into the universe to the Amazon and the Google people. I know sometimes you can change the voices on those things. If I could speak to Majel Barrett's voice and say computer on screen, and it like sends my YouTube to my TV, I would be. I'd be in for that. I will spend a few $100s to buy that.
That would probably be a pretty lengthy task of creating that, just because there's a finite amount of what she has said, and she passed away a few years ago. So right,
you might have to get a voice-alike actress to do some of it or something like that. But it's doable, man. They can copy so many voices these days. She was on. I bet she's been on more episodes than Worf.
She was absolutely. But you know what? They did unleash that. They didn't really unleash it. They have that. It's basically Photoshop for audio, where you can just like take a sample of someone's voice and record yourself and change your own voice to sound like that person's.
Yes, I've heard of that, which is awesome. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the technology exists. We have the technology. We can rebuild her.
That sounds so awful somehow.
It does, but it was a $6 Million Man reference, and I had to do it.
I know. I knew what it was.
It was too perfect of a reference to not say the whole thing. It did sound a little bad since she's no longer with us. This episode is dedicated to Majel Barrett. Thanks for listening, everybody. Live long and prosper.
Bye.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at StarTrekUcast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.